900 million people. One command. Instant obedience. But here's what nobody expected. It didn't last. Now imagine the opposite. Achieving discipline without any force. Without fear. Without control. And it lasting over 1,500 years. History ran this experiment on the human mind. Same goal. Opposite methods. Only one survived. Which one actually works? Stay with me. The answer will challenge everything you think you know about discipline. In 1968, Mao Zedong made a decision that reshaped an entire generation. The Down to the Countryside movement sent 17 million urban youth to rural labor camps. No debate. No choice. No negotiation. Imagine waking up one day and being told, your life is no longer yours. Your choices, gone. Your plans, irrelevant. You will obey, or face consequences. But here's where it gets interesting. This was discipline at scale, centralized, enforced, inescapable. Families were separated. Education was interrupted. Individual dreams became secondary to collective demands. For millions, survival meant obedience. Resistance wasn't just discouraged, it was dangerous. Now, you might think this level of control would create permanent discipline. That's what everyone assumed. But compliance is not the same as commitment. And here's what no one realized at the time. External control was creating internal dependency. Think about what that means for a moment. The system operated through fear, surveillance, and consequences. Every action was monitored. Every deviation noted. Every individual became part of a larger machine where personal will was systematically replaced by collective commands. Young students who had dreams of becoming doctors, engineers, artists, suddenly found themselves digging irrigation ditches and planting rice. Their previous knowledge became irrelevant overnight. Their skills, unused. Their ambitions, forbidden. The psychological impact. More devastating than you'd expect. People stopped making long-term plans because planning itself became pointless. Why dream when your dreams can be erased by a single command? Why develop personal goals when the collective dictates every action? This approach to discipline wasn't new to history. Throughout time, rulers and systems have attempted to control human behavior through external force. The methods vary, but the principle remains constant. Impose order from the outside, and behavior will follow. And it did work, at least in the short term. Millions followed. Behavior changed overnight. Society transformed. The visible results were undeniable. But here's where the story takes a turn. Decades later, researchers discovered something disturbing. When the force disappeared, so did the discipline. The behaviors that seemed so deeply ingrained, the compliance that appeared absolute, it all began to unravel once the external pressure was removed. Interviews with those who lived through this period revealed a common pattern. Many described feeling lost when the commands stopped. They had learned to follow orders, to suppress their own judgment, to wait for instructions. But they had not learned to govern themselves. The discipline had been imposed, not internalized. And when the imposing force weakened, the discipline crumbled with it. So was it ever real? Or was it merely obedience masquerading as discipline? Keep that question in mind, because the contrast you're about to see will answer it. Now imagine the opposite. What if no one commanded you? No one watched you. No one punished failure. Could discipline even exist without external force? Most people would say no. But they'd be wrong. Shi Heng Yi proves otherwise, and the method is completely counterintuitive. In the Shaolin tradition, discipline is a choice, renewed every single day. Wake before dawn, your decision. Practice meditation for hours, your commitment. Endure physical training, your will. No one forces you. The only authority is your own mind, and the natural consequences of your choices. Now here's where this gets fascinating. Take the practice of standing meditation. You hold one position for an hour, sometimes longer. Your legs shake. Your mind rebels. Every instinct screams, stop. But no master forces you to stay. No punishment awaits if you quit. So why do they stay? You stay because you chose this path. And that single difference changes everything. This creates something entirely different from what we saw with forced discipline. Discipline that comes from within. Not borrowed from fear. Not dependent on oversight. Self-generated. Self-sustaining. Permanent. Shi Heng Yi teaches that true mastery cannot be given, it must be claimed. The mind learns to govern itself. Slowly. Deliberately. Willingly. But here's what makes this approach so powerful. This discipline requires something that forced compliance never develops: internal awareness. You must observe your own mind. Notice when it resists. Understand why it wants to quit. And then consciously choose to continue, not because someone demands it, but because you've decided this is the path you want to walk. Consider the daily routine of a Shaolin monk. Before sunrise, they rise, not because an alarm forces them, but because they've committed to this practice. They begin with meditation, sitting in stillness while their mind tries every trick to distract them. Thoughts arise. Discomfort builds. Boredom creeps in. But they sit. Not because they must. Because they choose. Then comes physical training. Movements repeated thousands of times. Stances held until muscles burn. Techniques practiced until they become second nature. No one stands over them with threats. No punishment system tracks their effort. The only measure is their own progress. The only judge is their own conscience. Now here's the part that seems impossible at first. The Shaolin monks have practiced this form of discipline for over 15 centuries. Generation after generation, students arrive seeking mastery. Some stay for years. Others leave after months or even days. But those who remain all share one thing in common: they chose to be there. Every morning they choose to wake. Every training session, they choose to participate. Every moment of difficulty, they choose to persist. What's remarkable is what happens over time. The discipline doesn't weaken, it strengthens. The voluntary commitment doesn't fade, it deepens.
Why?
Because every choice reinforces the neural pathways of self-governance. Every decision to continue builds the psychological muscle of autonomy. Make no mistake, this path is harder at first. There's no external force pushing you forward when motivation fades. No drill sergeant yelling at you to continue. No surveillance system tracking your compliance. No consequences waiting if you quit. Just you and your commitment. Just your mind and your choice. But over time, something remarkable happens. The discipline becomes unshakable because it's yours. It doesn't depend on anyone watching. It doesn't require external motivation. It exists because you have built it, brick by brick, choice by choice, moment by moment. When no one is watching, the discipline remains. Now let's compare these two approaches directly, because the difference is more extreme than you might think. So here's the experiment history conducted for us: two approaches, same human psychology, opposite methods. One controlled 900 million through fear and command. The other guides individuals through choice and awareness. Here's a test that reveals everything. Imagine both systems face a crisis. Mao's approach: issue a command. Enforce compliance. Monitor results. It works instantly, but only while the force remains. The moment the authority weakens, the moment surveillance drops, the moment consequences become uncertain, the discipline begins to fade. Shi Heng Yi's approach: the individual assesses, chooses, acts. Slower to mobilize, but once committed, unstoppable.
Why?
Because the commitment comes from within, it doesn't depend on external circumstances. Crisis or calm, watched or alone, the discipline persists. Now think about your own life for a moment. When someone forces you to do something, how long does it last after they stop watching? A diet imposed by a doctor: how many people maintain it once the appointments end? An exercise routine enforced by a trainer: does it continue when the sessions stop? A work ethic demanded by a boss: does it survive a change in management? But here's the pattern you'll recognize. When you choose something for yourself, when does that commitment break? When you genuinely decide to pursue something, not because you have to, but because you want to, that decision can last a lifetime. Look at learning an instrument. If a parent forces a child to practice piano, threatening punishment for every missed session, what happens when the child moves away to college? The piano sits untouched. The skill, abandoned. The discipline, gone. But when someone chooses to learn music, when they save their own money for lessons, when they practice because they love the sound, when they push through difficulty because the music matters to them, that's different. No one needs to force them. The discipline is self-sustaining. One builds dependency. The other builds autonomy. One creates compliance that fades. The other creates commitment that lasts. Now here's the scale of this difference. Mao's system created obedience, immediate, visible, massive in scale. But it required constant enforcement, constant surveillance, constant pressure. The infrastructure needed to maintain the system was enormous. Local officials, monitoring committees, public criticism sessions, reward systems for compliance, punishment systems for deviation. Every level of society had to be organized around maintaining the discipline from the outside. Shi Heng Yi's approach creates mastery, slow, internal, individual. It requires no oversight, no punishment, no external control. When the teacher leaves, the discipline deepens.
Why?
Because the student has learned not just to follow, but to lead themselves. Not just to obey, but to choose. So which creates lasting transformation? History ran the experiment. Millions lived it. And the answer is undeniable. One method collapsed within decades. When China's political landscape shifted, when the Cultural Revolution ended, when the intense pressure to conform began to ease, much of the forced discipline evaporated. Researchers studying this period found that many behaviors disappeared remarkably quickly once they were no longer enforced. Meanwhile, the Shaolin tradition has survived for over 1,500 years. Through dynasties rising and falling. Through wars and peace. Through persecution and acceptance. The discipline endured because it was never dependent on external force. Each generation chose to continue it. Each student chose to practice it. Each master chose to teach it. You tell me which one works. Throughout this journey, we'll test these two methods in every possible way. When does force truly work? When does choice prevail? When do both approaches fail? We'll examine real historical incidents, psychological research, and the patterns that shape our modern world. So here's your challenge. Think about your own discipline right now. Is it forced or chosen? And more importantly, does it last? If this question resonates with you, if you're ready to explore the deepest truths about human discipline and freedom, then join us. We're building something extraordinary here, a community of thinkers who refuse easy answers and demand real understanding. Drop your honest thoughts below. Share your experience. Your voice matters in this conversation. And if you're ready to walk this path with us, to question everything you thought you knew about discipline, control, and the human mind, hit subscribe. Because what we've started today is just the beginning of a much deeper journey. Until we meet again, keep questioning, keep choosing, and keep growing. See you in the next one.